The night was cold and quiet. In the shadows of the human settlement, a tiny alien girl crouched behind broken crates. Her thin arms hugged her knees, her glowing eyes wide with fear. She had been running for days, chased away from every place. She tried to hide. Hunger gnawed at her stomach and her small frame shook from weakness. She believed no one in this world would ever help her. From the corner of her eye, she saw movement. A large shape stepped out of the darkness. She froze, her breath caught in her throat. It was not another human. It was a creature she had never dared to approach before. A dog. Its heavy paws pressed against the dirt, its dark fur gleaming in the moonlight. The animal's eyes locked onto hers, and the girl's heart raced faster. To her, the dog looked like a beast, strong enough to end her in a single strike. She pressed her back against the crate, whispering in her alien tongue, begging the stars for protection. Every sound of the dog's claws scraping the ground made her tremble more. She thought of stories told in her colony, stories where beasts guarded humans, tearing apart anything that looked different. And she knew she looked different. She was small, fragile, and alien. The dog's tail wagged once, slow and calm, but the girl did not understand. To her, the movement was a threat. Her tiny hands grabbed at a piece of metal lying near her feet, more for comfort than defense. She did not want to fight. She only wanted to survive. From the distance, a man's voice called out, "Easy, boy." A human stepped closer, tall and broad, his face calm yet watchful. His eyes met the child's, and for a moment she thought he might drag her out and send her away. Humans, in her experience, were not kind to strays, especially not alien ones. But he did not shout. He did not move fast. Instead, he stood still, letting the dog take the lead. The girl's body shook harder. She wanted to run, but her legs were too weak. She had not eaten in 2 days. If she tried to escape, she would fall before she reached the road. The dog moved forward slowly, sniffing the air. His ears perked, and his tail wagged again, faster this time. The girl gasped and raised the piece of metal, her arms trembling. She whispered to herself that if this was the end, she would face it with open eyes. Then, something unexpected happened. The dog stopped just a few feet away and lowered his body to the ground. His head rested on his paws, his eyes soft and unthreatening. He made no sound of aggression. Instead, a low whine escaped his throat. It was not a growl of warning, but a sound of sympathy. The girl tilted her head, confused. She had seen animals bare teeth in anger but never show weakness to her. She waited for a trick, some sudden attack, but none came. The dog only lay there, his eyes never leaving hers, as if telling her he meant no harm. The human man knelt down beside his companion. He spoke in a low voice, not in words the girl could understand, but the tone was gentle, almost soothing. His voice carried no command, only patience. She did not know what he was saying, but she felt that he was speaking more for her safety than the dog's. Her grip on the metal rod loosened, though she did not drop it. Fear still held her heart, but another feeling began to stir inside her, curiosity. Why was this beast not attacking her? Why was this human not chasing her away? The night breeze carried the scent of food from somewhere near the human's home. Her stomach twisted painfully, reminding her of her hunger. The dog's nose twitched, and he looked back at the man, then back at the girl, as if asking permission. The man gave a small nod. Slowly, the dog inched closer, keeping his head low. The girl's body tensed again. Every step he took felt like thunder to her ears. She raised the rod, ready to strike if she must, but when the dog reached her, he did not attack. Instead, he pressed his warm nose against her tiny hand. The girl gasped, nearly dropping her weapon. The dog's breath was warm and his touch gentle. She blinked in disbelief as the beast she had feared showed her the first sign of kindness she had ever known on this strange world. Tears filled her eyes, though she did not understand why. Perhaps it was relief. Perhaps it was the sudden shock of comfort. The human watched silently, not moving closer, letting the moment play out. For the first time in days, the alien girl did not feel completely alone. She was still afraid, but in that moment she wondered if this strange animal and the quiet human might not be enemies after all. The encounter had begun in fear, but something fragile was forming, something she did not yet have the courage to name. Asterisk. The night grew heavier and silence wrapped the settlement like a blanket. The alien girl sat frozen, her tiny hand still trembling from the touch of the dog's nose. She had expected teeth, claws, pain, but instead, she had felt warmth. It unsettled her even more because she did not know how to trust it. The dog stayed close, his body low to the ground, his eyes never sharp but calm and watchful. The girl's chest rose and fell quickly, her breath shaky as her mind argued with her heart. Should she push him away, or should she let this moment last a little longer? The human man remained at a distance, his posture relaxed but steady, like someone who knew that rushing forward would break fragile trust. His voice reached out again, soft and steady. Though she could not understand his words, his tone was clear. It held patience, not demand. The girl's stomach growled loudly. She pressed a hand to her belly, embarrassed and afraid. Hunger had been her constant companion, gnawing at her like a shadow she could not escape. The dog tilted his head at the sound, then turned to the man with a quick bark. It was sharp but not hostile, as though he was telling the human that the little one needed help. The man rose slowly, brushing dust from his hands. He walked to a wooden crate near his doorway and pulled something out, a small piece of bread wrapped in cloth. The smell drifted toward her, warm and comforting, and her mouth watered instantly. Her instincts screamed at her to run. Food was often used as a trap. She remembered how others had lured strays only to strike them down once they were close. Her people had told her never to trust kindness from outsiders. Yet her body betrayed her. Her eyes locked on the bread, and her fingers twitched with desire. The man crouched again, laying the bread on the ground halfway between them. He did not push it toward her. He did not wave it like bait. Instead, he simply placed it there, then leaned back, showing her he would not force her choice. The girl stared at the food, then at the dog. He wagged his tail, gave a playful bark, and then did something unexpected. He pushed the bread gently with his nose, sliding it closer to her. Her breath caught. Was this a trick? No beast would share food with someone so weak. Yet here it was, nudging her survival closer, as if inviting her to take it. Her hands shook as she reached out. She picked up the bread, her heart pounding so loud she was sure the man and the dog could hear it. Slowly, carefully, she brought it to her lips and took a bite. The taste was simple, but rich, filling her mouth with something she had long forgotten. Hope. The human smiled faintly but said nothing. He let the silence carry the weight of the moment. The girl chewed slowly, every bite easing the knot of fear inside her. The dog crept closer again, still on his belly, moving like a friend rather than a predator. The girl stiffened, clutching the bread, unsure if he wanted it back. But instead of stealing, the dog simply sat near her, his tail sweeping the ground gently. He leaned forward and gave a soft huff of air, almost like a sigh. For the first time, the alien girl lowered her weapon completely. The piece of metal clattered to the ground beside her. Her shoulders slumped and she let out a sound halfway between a sob and a laugh. She had not wanted to let go of her fear. It was the only thing that had kept her alive. But in that moment, fear seemed weaker than the warmth pressing at her heart. The man noticed. He took a step forward, careful and slow. The girl's eyes darted to him, but she did not run. She only pressed the bread tighter against her chest, ready to defend it if needed. He stopped a few feet away and sat down on the ground, lowering himself to her level. His hands rested open on his knees, showing he carried no weapon. He simply sat there, a quiet figure under the moonlight, waiting for her to decide. The dog leaned closer, brushing his nose against her arm. This time, she did not pull back. She flinched, yes, but then her fingers moved, uncertain, shaky, but willing. She touched his fur. The feeling startled her. It was softer than she imagined, warm against her cold skin. The dog's tail wagged harder and he pressed closer, clearly pleased by her touch. Tears gathered in her eyes again, but this time they were not from fear. They were from something she had nearly forgotten existed. Connection. The human watched, his gaze steady, his lips lifting in a small smile. He did not need to speak to know what this meant. He had seen this moment before, the fragile point where survival and trust begin to merge. The alien girl was still cautious, but something had shifted inside her. The encounter was no longer just about fear. It was the first step towards something, more, something she did not yet have words for. And though the night was still dark, in her heart a small light flickered, hope that maybe, just maybe, she was no longer alone. The settlement grew quieter as the hours passed. Only the wind moved through the empty paths, rattling loose boards and carrying faint scents of smoke and bread. The alien girl sat on the cold ground, her back still pressed against the crates. Her tiny hands clutched the half-eaten bread, crumbs sticking to her fingers. The dog lay beside her now, his body curled protectively, his warmth pushing against her shivering frame. She wanted to believe this was real, that the creature would not harm her, that the human man watching her with steady eyes meant her no danger. Yet trust was not something she knew how to give. Her past had taught her to run, to hide, to keep her guard high no matter what kindness looked like. The man shifted slightly, pulling a flask from his coat. He set it gently on the ground and rolled it toward her. The flask stopped just short of her feet. She looked at it suspiciously, then at him. His hands were empty. His voice came low, calm as ever. Though she could not understand the words, she felt the tone. It was an invitation, not a command. Her throat burned with thirst. She had not tasted clean water in days. She reached slowly, her hand trembling as she took the flask. With careful fingers, she opened it and lifted it to her lips. The first sip was sharp, clean, and refreshing. She swallowed quickly, too quickly, and coughed, spilling a little down her chin. The dog barked softly, wagging his tail as if encouraging her. She looked at him, startled by the sound, then let out a shaky laugh that surprised even her. The dog leaned closer and licked the water from her hand, earning another tiny laugh that carried both relief and disbelief. But just as the warmth of the moment settled, shadows of her memory returned. Images of hands grabbing her, voices shouting, and harsh treatment burned in her mind. She froze, the flask slipping from her grasp. Panic tightened her chest. What if this was the same? What if this was only the beginning of another trap? Her eyes darted to the man. He had not moved closer, but his presence was still there, strong, silent, steady. She felt the weight of her fear pressing hard, telling her to run, to fight, to protect herself before it was too late. Her breathing grew fast. Her tiny frame shook violently. She pushed the dog back with her weak hands. Though he resisted only by leaning forward, unwilling to abandon her, she whispered to herself in her alien tongue, begging her mother's spirit to protect her from another betrayal. The man saw the panic building. He raised his hand slowly, not toward her, but to his chest. Then he lowered it back to the ground, signaling calm. He did not rush. He did not speak louder. He simply let her see that he would not hurt her. The dog whined, sensing her distress. He pressed against her knees, nudging her gently. She tried to push him away again, but this time, her strength failed. Instead, she collapsed forward, her forehead pressing into his fur. Her tiny body shook with sobs she had been holding for far too long. The dog did not move away. He accepted her weight, wrapping himself around her like a shield. His steady heartbeat thudded against her ear, grounding her in the present. For the first time since she had been abandoned, she felt safe enough to cry. The man let the moment unfold without interruption. He knew this was the breaking point, not of trust lost, but of walls falling. He understood that fear had built, her defenses so high that only something pure, like the loyalty of a dog, could break through. Minutes passed before the girl's sobs softened. Her hands clung to the dog's fur, her tears soaking into his coat. She lifted her head slightly, her face streaked with wet lines. When her eyes met the human's again, they no longer burned with suspicion. They carried confusion, exhaustion, and something fragile, hope. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. She had no way to explain the storm inside her. Instead, she pressed her forehead back against the dog, whispering a sound so soft it barely reached the air. The man took a slow breath and finally spoke, his tone still quiet, still gentle. She could not understand his language, but she understood his presence. He was not here to break her. He was here to help her stand again. The night stretched on, but for the alien girl, something had shifted. Her fear had cracked, and through the cracks, light had started to pour in. She was not ready to trust fully, not yet. But the bond forming between her and the dog was undeniable. For the first time, she allowed herself to wonder. Maybe humanity was not the enemy she had believed. Maybe she had found something she thought she would never have again. Not safety, not shelter, something deeper. Family. The night air grew colder, wrapping the settlement in silence. The tiny alien girl sat close to the dog, her hands buried in his fur, her eyes still swollen from tears. She had cried until her body shook, until she could not fight anymore. Now she leaned against the animal, unsure if this comfort was real or only a dream. The dog's breathing was steady, a soft rhythm that soothed her. Every rise and fall of his chest told her he was alive, that he was not leaving. His warmth spread through her thin frame like a shield against the biting cold. She had feared him as a monster, yet now he felt more like a protector than anything she had known before. The human man still sat nearby, watching quietly. His eyes never left her, but he did not force his presence on her. He knew this fragile trust could vanish with one wrong move. His patience was unshaken. He let the dog carry the weight of comfort, knowing animals could sometimes bridge gaps humans could not. The girl lifted her head slightly, her gaze drifting to the human. He sat cross-legged, his hands resting open on his knees. His calmness unsettled her. She had always expected humans to act with force, commands, shouts, threats, but he gave none. He only waited. Her stomach growled again. She lowered her head, embarrassed. The dog barked softly, then stood and trotted back toward the man. He wagged his tail, looked between the two of them, and barked again as if urging the man to do something. The man understood. He pulled another small piece of food from his pack and placed it gently on the ground. The dog sniffed it once, then picked it up carefully. His paws patted against the dirt as he returned to the girl. He dropped the food in front of her and sat down, eyes bright and expectant. The girl blinked, stunned. She had never been given food like this. On her world, strength took food, and weakness lost it. Yet here was a creature she once feared, delivering food to her as if she were part of his pack. Her fingers shook as she reached out. She took the piece slowly, her eyes locked on the dog's. He wagged his tail in approval, as though proud of her choice. She brought the food to her mouth, and as she ate, the dog crept closer. At first she stiffened, thinking he might take the food back. But instead, he pressed his head gently against her shoulder. The pressure was firm, but soft. Not demanding, not threatening, just there. Her breath caught. She froze, unsure of what to do. The dog did not move away. He leaned harder, his body pressing into hers, his warmth wrapping around her like a blanket. Then, slowly, almost carefully, he nudged forward until his front legs wrapped around her. Tiny frame. It was not an attack. It was not dominance. It was a hug. Her eyes widened. For a long moment she could not breathe. She had never known such a gesture. No one had ever held her with such gentleness. No one had ever touched her without harm hidden behind it. Tears welled again, but these were different. Lighter, softer. The dog's head rested against her shoulder, his steady heartbeat echoing through her body. Her small hands lifted, hesitant, shaking. Finally, she placed them on his fur, clutching. Him back. A sob escaped her lips, but this one carried relief. The fear that had chained her heart began to loosen. For the first time in her life, she felt wanted, not because of what she could give, not because of what she could do, but simply because she was there. The human man let out a long breath, his eyes softening as he watched. He had seen kindness before, but this moment touched something deeper. Humanity could fight wars, build machines, and reach stars, but sometimes their truest strength came from the simplest things. Compassion, loyalty, love. The girl clung to the dog tightly, her sobs turning to quiet breaths. She whispered in her alien tongue, words of thanks that neither the man nor the dog could understand, but the meaning was clear in her trembling voice. The dog licked her cheek gently, as if to say she belonged now. She gasped at first, then let out a sound that was half a laugh and half a cry. It was the sound of a heart learning what family meant. The human shifted closer, careful not to break the moment. He placed a blanket on the ground near them, not touching her, just setting it within reach. The girl's eyes flickered toward it, then back to him. She hesitated, then slowly pulled it over herself and the dog, sharing its warmth. The man smiled faintly. He did not need words. He knew trust was forming, fragile but real. The night that had begun with fear had given birth to something unexpected. In the arms of a dog, an alien child had found her first embrace of family. And for the first time in a long time, she dared to believe she might not be alone anymore. The first light of dawn began to touch the edges of the sky. The stars faded slowly, giving way to pale shades of blue. The settlement was still quiet, but for the alien girl, the world no longer felt the same. She sat wrapped in the blanket. The dog pressed firmly against her side. Her small fingers clung to his fur, unwilling to let go, afraid that if she did, the warmth and safety would vanish like a dream. The human man rose from where he had been sitting all night. His back was stiff, but his eyes were calm, filled with quiet strength. He had not slept, choosing instead to keep watch. For him, the moment mattered more than rest. He knew trust took time, and tonight, something precious had begun to grow. The girl stirred, blinking against the light. Her thin body ached, but the ache was softer now. She no longer felt completely alone. She looked at the dog, who lifted his head and licked her hand before settling back against her. The gesture made her chest tighten with something she had not felt in so long: belonging. The man stepped closer, carrying a small pot of warm broth. Its smell drifted through the air, rich and comforting. The girl's eyes widened, her stomach growling loudly. She hesitated, unsure if she should accept more. On her world, nothing was free. Every kindness had a price. But the dog nudged her hand, urging her forward. He barked once, wagging his tail as if to say, "It's safe." The girl swallowed, hard, then reached out. The man crouched low, setting the pot within her reach, careful not to make sudden moves. His patience spoke louder than any words. She picked up the small bowl and lifted it to her lips. The warmth spread through her body, like sunlight, chasing away the cold that had haunted her bones. Tears pricked her eyes again, though she tried to hide them. She could not remember the last time food had made her feel alive. The man sat nearby, not touching, not pressing, only watching with quiet approval. The dog barked happily, circling her once before settling back down. The girl ate slowly, each bite filling her with more than just strength. It filled her with a feeling she struggled to name. For the first time, she let herself study the human. His face was weathered but not harsh. His eyes were steady, carrying no cruelty, only patience. His every action told her something she had never believed about humans. They could be gentle. Still, doubt lingered. Her past whispered warnings in her ear. She had been hurt before, betrayed before. Could she really trust them? Could she really stay? The dog seemed to sense her thoughts. He leaned against her, his head pressing into her chest. She clutched him tightly, her small frame trembling. Her voice broke into a whisper in her alien tongue, words she did not expect anyone to understand. Why? Why show me kindness? The man could not understand her words, but he felt the meaning in her voice. He pointed gently to his chest, then to the dog, then to her. 3 points. 1 line. Family. Her breath caught. She had no word in her language for this feeling, not anymore. Her people had taken family from her, replaced it with fear, yet here was a human and his animal, offering it without demand. She looked at the dog, at the man, and for the first time, her lips curved into the smallest of smiles. It was faint, fragile, but real. The man nodded, his expression softening further. The dog barked happily, jumping to his feet and circling them both before settling back at her side. His energy pulled laughter from her, a sound she thought she had forgotten. The moment was more than survival. It was a bond, something deeper than food, shelter, or safety. It was proof that love could cross every barrier, even between worlds. The sun climbed higher. The girl leaned against the dog and looked toward the horizon. For the first time, she did not see only fear. She saw possibility. She saw tomorrow. And though she could not yet say it aloud, she felt it in her heart. She was no longer just a lost alien child. She was becoming something else. Someone with a place. Someone who belonged. The sun climbed higher in the sky, painting the settlement in gold. For a short while, the alien girl almost felt safe. She sat wrapped in the blanket, her small hand resting on the dog's fur as he dozed beside her. The human man worked quietly nearby, mending a wooden fence, his movements slow and deliberate so she would not feel threatened. But safety was fragile. Safety had always been fragile in her life. A sudden sound cracked through the calm. Metal, striking against stone. The girl flinched, her heart leaping in panic. The dog barked sharply and jumped to his feet, placing himself between her and the noise. The man raised his head, eyes narrowing, then set his tools down. For the girl, the sound dragged her back into memories she had fought to forget. She saw flashes of cages, dark halls, cold hands dragging her away. She remembered the voices of those who laughed at her fear, who used her small frame as nothing more than a test subject. Every muscle in her body tensed. Her hands shook as she gripped the blanket tighter, her breath coming fast. The man noticed. He spoke softly, his tone calm, but his voice could not reach her through the storm in her mind. She pressed herself, back against the crates, her eyes wide, staring into shadows that were no longer there but still alive in her memory. The dog whined and nudged her hand, trying to pull her back, but her mind was trapped. She whispered in her alien tongue, broken phrases of fear and pleading. She thought the past was here again, thought the humans she had trusted before would return to hurt her. The man did not step closer. He knew sudden movement would break everything. Instead, he crouched low where he stood, lowering his height so he would not look threatening. His hands opened wide, empty, his palms facing her. He let silence carry the message. You are safe. The dog pressed, harder against her, his body warm and firm. He barked once, short and commanding, as if telling her to focus on him, not the ghosts of her past. She blinked, her tears blurring her vision. Slowly the present began to cut through the memories. The sound that had startled her was only a loose piece of metal rolling in the wind, nothing more. But her fear did not vanish so easily. She hugged the dog tightly, her body trembling. Her trust was real, but it was fragile. Fragile enough that the weight of her history threatened to crush it. The man finally moved, but not toward her. He turned his back slightly, walking to the loose piece of metal. He lifted it calmly and set it aside, showing her the truth that the danger was not real. Then he returned to his work, acting as though nothing had happened. This small act told her something words never could. He would not use her fear against her. He would not take advantage of her weakness. He would protect her, even from the ghosts she carried. The girl's tears slowed, her breathing evening out. She buried her face in the dog's fur, whispering softly. She knew the past was still inside her, carved deep into her mind. But here, with this human and his dog, she was beginning to believe the past did not have to decide her future. The man glanced at her once, his eyes steady, then returned to his task. The dog licked her cheek, his tail wagging gently as though reminding her she was not alone. For a long time she stayed silent. Her thoughts tangled between fear and hope, between memory and reality. But as the day stretched on, she found herself watching the man more closely. Every movement he made was careful, never rushed. Every action told her he wanted her to feel safe. She still did not fully trust. She still carried shadows, but trust had started to grow roots and no memory could take that away completely. As the sun dipped lower, she leaned against the dog and whispered a vow in her language, so soft it vanished into the air. I will try. It was not a promise of complete trust, not yet, but it was the first step toward healing. And though the shadows of her past still lingered, she was beginning to see the light shining through them. The night returned, soft and quiet, but different from the one before. The alien girl no longer crouched in fear. She sat on the blanket near the fire the man had built, the dog curled tightly against her side. The flames danced in her wide eyes, chasing away the darkness that had haunted her for so long. The man stirred the fire with a stick, keeping it alive. His face glowed faintly in the light, calm and steady as always. He had spoken little all day, letting silence do the work of trust. He understood that words meant little to a child who could not understand them. Actions were the only language she could believe in. The girl chewed slowly on a small piece of food he had given her earlier. She no longer snatched it with suspicion, no longer clutched it as though it might be stolen. She ate with quiet thought, her body still tense but no longer trembling. Each bite was another step away from the fear that had chained her. The dog stretched lazily, then rested his head in her lap. His eyes closed, his body heavy with trust. The weight made her smile faintly. For a long time, she had believed no one would ever lean on her. No one would ever want her close. Yet here was a creature who chose her willingly. The man noticed the smile. It was small, but to him it was everything. He took a slow breath, reached into his pack and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. When he unfolded it, the girl's eyes widened. Inside was a small wooden carving, shaped like a star. Its edges were smooth, polished by careful hands. He placed it gently on the ground and pushed it toward her. She looked from the carving to his face, her heart racing. No human had ever given her a gift. Gifts, in her life, always came with a price. But the man's eyes held no bargain, only quiet offering. She reached out with shaking fingers and picked it up. The wood was warm from the fire, light in her hands. She traced the star's edges slowly, her throat tight. She whispered in her alien tongue, a soft thank you that neither the man nor the dog could understand, but the meaning was clear. The man nodded once, then leaned back, letting her keep the carving. The dog wagged his tail, as though celebrating this simple exchange. As the fire crackled, the girl leaned against the dog, the star clutched tightly in her hand. Her eyes grew heavy, but before sleep claimed her, she turned her gaze to the man. For the first time, she did not see him as a stranger. She saw him as something she had lost long ago. A guardian. The night passed, and when morning came, she woke to birdsong and the warmth of the dog's fur. The man was already working, his hands busy with repairs on the fence. She sat up slowly, the star still in her grip, and watched him. Her past whispered again, warning her not to trust, telling her this peace could break. But for once, she chose not to listen. Instead, she stood, her tiny legs unsteady, and walked toward him. The dog trotted beside her, his tail wagging proudly. The man paused when he noticed her. He did not move, letting her decide what to do. She stopped a few feet away, clutching the star to her chest. Her lips parted, and though her voice was soft and broken, she spoke one word in her own language. A word that carried the weight of everything she had felt since meeting them. Family. The man did not understand the word, but he understood the meaning. His chest tightened, and his eyes softened. He crouched down, lowering himself to her level. He placed a hand over his heart, then pointed to her, then to the dog, and back to himself. A silent circle. A family dot. The girl's eyes filled with tears, but these were not tears of fear. They were tears of release, of acceptance. She stepped forward slowly, the dog nudging her along, and pressed her small hand against the man's arm. The touch was light, trembling, but it was enough. The bond was sealed. The man smiled gently, the dog barked joyfully, and the girl let out a sound she never thought she would make again. A laugh, free and pure. The past still lingered, but it no longer held her captive. She had found something stronger than fear, stronger than memory. She had found family. And as the morning light bathed them in warmth, the alien girl, the human, and the dog stood together, not as strangers from different worlds, but as one.